Hi, so welcome to today's COVID-19 update. There wasn't one yesterday because actually our internet went down here yesterday. There was an island-wide issue here in Singapore. So not only stuck at home with no sports, but no internet as well. That's whatever, what can drive you crazy. So the news today really, the curve is flattening in the US and in the UK. Added to the list of countries that are now starting to restart certain services, you've got New Zealand, Hong Kong and Germany now looking at how they start to get people back released into the wild, as I put it the other day. So what's really interesting is, as I mentioned now, the narrative is going to shift towards people starting to gradually open up their economies and send certain people back into work. And so now what you'll see is, instead of new infection numbers, because new infection numbers was kind of the metric that they needed to look at the flattening of the curve, what you're now going to see is everybody reporting on the amount of people who infect other people. So they're going to look at how many new cases come from each infection, and basically the metric is called R, and they need to keep the reinfection rate at 1 or less. And basically, as long as you keep it at 1 or less, then the curve remains flat. If it's 1 or more, then the curve starts to elevate again. So what you'll see now, as you start to open up in, as we've had Denmark, Norway, Spain, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Germany, as these places start to send people back to work, they'll be measuring this reinfection rate and looking at how that goes. And as long as we see reinfection rates around 1, then you'll start to see things open up more and more and more. Obviously, they'll still have social distancing measures, they'll still have lots of other restrictions, but at least parts of the economy can get back to work. And as I mentioned before, things like construction and stuff like that may well be the first ones to get back because they have such a big economic impact, but don't require lots of people to be in close proximity to each other. So this will obviously be great news. I think the big reaction will probably come when you see the US or the UK able to do this, and I believe Boris Johnson's supposed to be giving a speech later today, and I think that's what sort of eagerly anticipated as being one of the topics for that. Jobless numbers in the US came out today. The market's in the green, which obviously means the job numbers were terrible. That seems to be the correlation at the moment. The worse the numbers, the better the market performs. But it does seem, apart from New York, most of the other jobless claims seem to have peaked. So New York accelerated slightly, but pretty much every other data point seems to have eased off a little bit from the initial shock. Yeah, there were some surprises on the downside. So Morgan Stanley came out with lower than expected numbers. Retail sales came out lower than expected, although how on earth anybody expected retail not to be an absolute bloodbath in this environment, I really don't know. But yeah, so there were some sort of surprises on the downside yesterday, which pushed the market down a little bit, but today it's back in the green again. So yeah, things to watch are markets reopening. Oh, one other thing was the Pope gave a speech saying that he thinks this would be a great time to introduce universal basic income, and if anybody can afford it, the Pope can. So I reckon it would be a good thing to target countries where the annual salary is less than $1,000 and provide a universal basic income to them. The Vatican could finance that pretty much from the interest on their interest, and it'd probably get them loads of new followers as well, wouldn't it? So anyway, that's all for today. I'll be back to normal updates tomorrow, internet being with us. Speak soon, stay safe.